Ula vinaka, talofa lava, malalele, and kia ora family. Welcome back to the Nesian Money Show. My name is Joe, and today we've got a very special guest with us that Izzy's going to introduce to you. But this show is all about empowering our Pacifica brothers and sisters in the areas of money and finance. And I'll give it over to Izzy.
Vinaka Joey, thank you. On today's guest is someone with an incredible journey, both on and off the field. Keith is a former rugby league player for the mighty Penrith Panthers. Congratulations to you guys. And has represented PNG at the international level. After his sporting career, Keith has shifted gears in a big way, moving into the world of engineering. He co-founded Axia Engineering, where he's now at the forefront of civil construction and geotechnical projects. Keith's story is a great example of how someone can achieve success in different areas of life, from excelling in the rugby league to becoming a leader in engineering industry. Keith has shown with the right mindset and determination, anything is possible. He's passionate about finding an innovative solution to tough problems and is now leading major projects in construction and geotechnical design. We're excited to hear from Keith as he shares his journey, the lessons he's learned, and how he made the transition from sport to engineering, all while continuing to pave the way for Pacifica excellence in industry beyond sports. Thank you, Keith.
Wow, what an intro, guys. Damn. Yeah, my man, Keith.
Really great to be here. Thanks, Izzy and Joe. Really great incentive. We were talking about this offline, and I think kudos to you guys getting this started and getting the word out there to a lot of the audience. So happy to be on board.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Brother, again, can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, went to school?
Yeah, so my story originates back in Port Moresby in PNG. So my dad, originally from Samoa, studying medicine, and I think because a lot of the islands are so small, they sort of divvy up depending on what your studies are. So I had an uncle studying Fiji, and my uncle in Auckland as well in New Zealand, and my dad went to Papua New Guinea to study medicine, and that's where he met my mum. So there's my brother and I were born there, stayed there till about 92, 93, and then we relocated to Melbourne first. Initially, so my mum came over pregnant with she had my third sibling in Melbourne, but then we went back and she came back pregnant with three kids, and expecting. We went down to Melbourne and she gave birth to my youngest sibling there. We stayed there for a couple of months, probably about 6 months, and then relocated to Wentworthville. As you do, I think as an immigrant, you go to your auntie's house, and I think it was a 2-bedroom townhouse in Wentworthville, and there was 7 or 8 of us sort of squeezed in, and we sort of got our journey started in Wentworthville, and then moved to Blacktown in 97, and that's probably where I like to say I grew up, essentially. So went to Blacktown in 97, Patrician Brothers Blacktown from grade 7 to grade 12, in a community that probably coming from Papua New Guinea wasn't exposed to some degree, so you got to find your feet a little bit. A lot of my friends I found through sport, sort of hung around with a lot of Samoans, Fijians, Cook Islands and Australians, and essentially that's where I found my feet. Blacktown was very simple then. The West Point wasn't there. There was still a couple of farms. The stations were still being upgraded. It was the old train station, if anyone can remember that. But that's essentially the start of my story, and migrating over from PNG and sort of a bit of a half caste, I suppose, or mixed race you'd call it.
How'd you find that in school?
So initially when I came over to Wentworthville, it wasn't as multicultural, to be honest. And I've always had this bit of a predicament being a mixed race. Like, I'm not sure, when I'm in Papua New Guinea, you sort of get referred to as, there's that Samoan kid. And then when I go to Samoa, because I travelled a lot, and in Samoa they'll say, there's that PNG kid. So it's sort of, I think it was a bit tough because as a young person and you come over, you want to sort of try fit in, and try and find your place. And even as you go through your teenage years, I think you're trying to adjust to being Australian, but then you don't look Australian, and you're sort of a bit of a minority, and you progress through. But I think the changes, whilst I didn't appreciate when I was younger, I think I went to, by the time I was in grade 7, I've been to 7 different schools.
Oh.
That change and that adversity, I suppose, as a young person, I think has steadied me fair for as I've got older, and that what once was a difference or a uniqueness in different sort of cultures or different communities has now been, I see it more as a strength that can adjust to change, different professions, different projects, and even can empathise with different cultures as well, from a Polynesian sense, but and also different cultures that Australia has now become.
Yeah, the resilience, I guess you call it. The character that you develop into, right? It could go one way, it could go a negative way, or it could go a positive way. I think you've used it in a very positive way. And do you think sport had to do with that? Like that part of that toughness, that mental toughness? Yeah,
I think initially sports gave me that avenue to make friends for sure, right? So a lot of my best friends, like I've known Izzy since I was probably 12 or 13. And I think that's you bond very quickly over sport, and there's that commonality, and you use that as an opportunity to make friends in the neighbourhood, make friends across a region, I suppose, from Blacktown to Penrith, and you see common faces. But it definitely helped me adapt at an early age to Australian culture and find myself.
You grew up in PNG, right? So PNG till 92.
Yeah, so I was born in 86, so we moved over when I was 7.
Yeah.
I did go back to Papua New Guinea a lot. My father was still there. So my mum came over a bit of a different circumstance. Like we sort of like to think we came for opportunity, and also Papua New Guinea was getting quite unsafe.
Yes.
But I very commonly after that went back to see my grandfather, or my bubu, which we call in Papua New Guinea, and also my dad. My dad was in Port Moresby. He lived in different places of Papua New Guinea, Goroka, Mount Hagen.
Yeah.
So got exposed to a lot of different places in Papua New Guinea, and PNG is an interesting place. It's very tribal, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of languages, and it's a place where when we're younger, you don't sort of associate or call yourself, I suppose, PNG when you're there.
Yeah.
It's generally, that person is from Hanobata, that person's from Hagen, that person's from Kundiawa, and it's very tribal and different. You could literally go from Blacktown to Parramatta and you wouldn't understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, do you guys
different
all say,
languages?
Yeah, proper different languages, man. Yeah. So on the coast, they speak Motu. In the mountains, they speak Pidgin, and they sort of in English as well. But then if you go, they will speak their own sort of local dialect, or sometimes completely different language. Right, so it's a very interesting place to grow up in.
A lot of natural resources there, right? And there's a lot of international sort of interference, in the politics and all the rest of it.
Yeah, so it's a mineral-rich country and a lot of resources. The way I like to think of it is probably like maybe like Africa of the Pacific, yes. Right? So there's a lot of resources there. Unfortunately, there's no secret that some of the money is not well looked after or well spent. I think they're getting better with that. They got their independence quite quick, and I don't think the country's adapted as they probably could have, and things could have been better. But mate, it's a great country. It's a rich country, rich in culture, rich in resources, and there's a lot of opportunity for work there too. There's different sort of islanders that go there and work in the mines and agriculture and different things.
I think one of our friends, sister, she's the head of ANZ. Said they've been posted in PNG, but she gets like 3 security guards to escort her every day to work and back. And it's like, I'm like, wow. And she's like, I don't know how much longer I probably shouldn't drop any names, but yeah.
Well, it's very different, right? So we go to Samoa, and Samoa is very different. Like you can walk around nighttime and whichever. Papua New Guinea, there's barbed wire fences. Police officers, AK-47s, tear gas, whichever. And I think probably if you stay there more than 6 months, you'll come across a story. We were robbed a couple of times, and I only lived there till I was 7.
Wow.
And since we've been to Australia, we've been in Blacktown with the door open and left the garage. And
left your door open in Blacktown?
Come in, come get me. So Izzy. Yeah.
But how has family and faith help with your journey?
So it's interesting, right? So when I was younger, so very devout. Like I went over to Samoa. I was baptised in Samoa, in our Congregational Church of Samoa, in Vailoi, where my dad's village. And faith at a young age was very strong, right? So pray, lean to God, and everything was there. When we migrated over, and sort of my essential story is that, you know, we came over with my mum and us, and, you know, my dad came for a little bit, but then he went over to Samoa and my parents essentially separated. So when I was young, I sort of thought, you know, no one's going to come and help me, essentially, right? So I'm going to do this on my own, and my faith sort of went apart a little bit in terms of, okay, well, let's rip in, let's study hard, let's work hard, and let's make this thing happen for myself and for my family. And whether it's through rugby league or academics, I'm going to figure it out one way or another. And then it sort of, a couple of things have happened over my life where I've turned back to faith, and for a number of different reasons. A few friends probably went through a period where 4 close friends passed away, and started thinking about life differently, and also married and a couple of, you know, starting a family. That how do we want to essentially raise a family, just combining that family and faith, and decided, you know, to lean further into a faith, which has always been there in the background, but, you know, trying to figure out on my own. And through different journeys, sort of reading the Word, going regularly to church, and being part of that community has sort of brought that back. And I come to the realisation that, you know, God never left me. I just had to go through a couple of things. I had to go through a couple of challenges and a bit of adversity. And the more you dive into the Word, the more you realise, you know, everyone from, you know, David to the Israelites to, you know, even the apostles in the New Testament, that they get to experience Jesus and then still get tested in different ways. That everyone has their own personal journey that they go through, but at the end of the day, God never leaves your side. So, and then now it's come full swing, and you know, we're raising 4 young children with Katrina and I, and family and faith. Like, faith is at the foundation of everything for us in what we do. Family, professional life, and everything else. So yeah.
Talking about your professional life now, I guess, you know, before we get to that, you finished high school, wanted to pursue a career in sports and into rugby league. So how did that go, and what's that, you know, that part of life taught you?
Yeah, so probably at a young age, I've always gone back to that thing, and there's different reasons for it, but maybe for another time, in terms of working hard and never really sort of understanding why. So I've always, from a young age, worked really hard in academics and really hard in professional sport, right? And through my own journey, I don't know whether that's my own, I suppose, happy to say, probably as a young person, trying to get validation maybe from my dad, and trying to sort of, you know, make probably my dad proud. That was probably the initial drive. But then as I sort of progressed through high school, even at Patrician Brothers, I used to study, catch a train, go to training, come back, and do that. So it's something I've always been used to. But when I graduated from Patrician Brothers, I went straight into Sydney Uni, right? Started a Bachelor of Civil Engineering, and then at the same time juggling probably semi-professional sport. So John Lang was a coach at Penrith at the time, and it was probably on the verge of going full-time, like proper professional. So you're able to sort of do weights in the morning, go to uni, come back and do your conditioning in the evening. And so I started university in 2005, and once I got to that phase where it's almost, you're nearly there, you can almost nearly touch it, it's very hard to do half and half. So it's very hard to do full-time uni and full-time professional. So I ended up making my debut in 2006 with John Lang, still the coach. Penrith were fresh off premiership in 2003, so there were a lot of guys that, you know, you've watched growing up.
Yeah.
You know, the Tony Pulatours, who, in my opinion, paved the way for a lot of the Polynesians into first grade, because there was a little bit of a stigma prior to that, you know, good at under 16s, but probably not, you know, as professional or, a little bit of stigma from a Polynesian point of view, that a little bit lazy. So once Tony sort of paved that way for us, we were in high school. We thought, oh man, this actually possible.
You can see it, yeah.
Wow. You can see someone paving the way at a professional level. That made that debut in 2006, and then chose to defer studies from that to give professional rugby league a good crack. And hell of an experience, man. Met some really good people, and you meet generally people at the top, regardless of what you see on TV, are really good people because they've sacrificed a lot to be there.
Just a little bit more about your Samoan heritage. So you travel back there a fair bit, or?
Yeah, so as I said, my dad went to Papua New Guinea on a scholarship.
Yep.
So I think the intention was he was always going to be there only 4 years, and he ended up being there 10. And on scholarship in the islands, the way it works is wherever you scholarship, then you go back and you work for the government, and almost sort of essentially repay the debt, right?
Yep.
Like to the country. So as a youngster, I remember I've been to Samoa at certain times when 3-4 years old for 3 to 6 months at a time. My dad relocated there in 1999. We went there twice in 2000, 2002, 2003, and sort of reconnected with a lot of the family there. And my Samoan background is a little bit different. A lot of, I suppose, Samoans probably go to Auckland and then, get their residency and then come through to Australia. My Samoan heritage is purely everyone's in Samoa.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so everyone sort of studies abroad, goes back to Samoa. My grandma was there. She only passed away last November.
Yep.
And all the cousins, everyone's there. And slowly, generations like myself, sort of just under 2 down from my grandma, have sort of moved into Canberra, Auckland, Wellington. But essentially, we always go back to Samoa in up here, and Vailoi is our village, essentially where we call home. So, the culture, I suppose, going back to your question, Joe, probably provided a lot of my foundations in terms of respect and humility. And I think that transfers over to, I suppose, how initially I approached sort of professional sport, but I still carried it with me in terms of how, my family, but then also from a professional sense too, that, I think the way we think about business and different things, there's that bit of respect and humility sort of underlining there.
Yeah, you were saying in where you came from, education was pushed more than sport, and you tell us a little bit about that,
that's right. So in Samoa, so we my grandmother's actually a teacher. My grandfather was probably a bit rough around the edges, I'd probably say, and a bit more maybe athletic. He really enjoyed boxing, and he really enjoyed drinking, right? But my grandmother really enforced education, firstly to my dad and the generation. So, uncle in telecommunications, my dad's a doctor, my uncle's an engineer, my other uncle went to the Philippines and studied agriculture, my other uncle's and then their kids, there's now judges, lawyers.
That wouldn't be common, right?
Multiple doctors. Well, essentially that was driven from my grandmother, and I feel like she prayed for everyone and reinforced academics, and that essentially for our family that was our ticket. A lot of families look to professional sports or different things. It was always entrenched in us to study hard, and around the you go back, then people talk, Keith's doing really well in school, Lily's doing great in her maths class, and so it was encouraged within our family, and that's where from grade 12 in Samoa, you really work hard to get a scholarship to go abroad to study. That's probably the main goal, to try to get educated in Fiji, New Zealand, wherever you can.
I should have done a podcast with you ages ago.
Well, that's good. That's what the platform's all about, right? To know the serious side of each other. Hey?
That's so true. That's so true. How'd you get started with uni, and how would someone, a young kid from Western Sydney, or it doesn't matter, at the islands? Actually, let's go with here, because I don't know how it sort of works in the islands, but after school or during school, you were thinking about uni already anyway, but how did you get there and decide?
Yeah, probably just start off just real quickly. I think, as I said, my Samoan background, we emphasise education. When I came over to Australia, that's where I saw the difference, I suppose, in sort of the mindset when we're in the islands compared to in Australia. when I came to Sydney, everyone was, particularly from a Pacific point of view, sport. And as a young person, there weren't many role models as such, right? So like probably start off with, congratulations for this platform, because when I was younger, I was yearning for a role model. If anyone sort of was to come to Blacktown and say, hey, you could do well with a business in landscaping, painting, even engineering, like you'd grab it with both hands, right? Like there's a lot of kids there, and I'm not the only one, where there's either single mums or the dads are working 2 jobs, and you've just migrated over and they're doing the best they can. Like you grab whatever opportunity you can. So I think, it'll be great to sort of, and this is a great sort of platform to provide that visibility of Polynesians doing business and not just professional sport, right? So I'll probably say that to start off with. Now, for my particular journey is I was always academically driven, and I mentioned in my original story, and I actually didn't know what I wanted to be, and I studied maths and physics and biology. My dad's from a medicine background, so I sort of keep that in the back of my mind, and maybe physio, I'm not sure. But when I was in Samoa, it was probably 2000 when the Olympics were on. We had school holidays when the Olympics were on. We went in September. My uncle, who's an engineer, put me on the back of a ute, and we went to the other island, Savaii, and we ran around. And I said, "Oh, look, this looks all right, man. This looks good, right?" So, and if I'm completely honest, what appealed more to me was my uncle had he had a wife, 4 kids, beautiful home, and I love that. Like I sort of, it was something that I looked for myself. So it isn't something that I jumped in and the light bulb moment or that ha moment. The cloud's clear and the sun shines, and you're going to be an engineer, because even to this day, it's probably, I wouldn't say there's a passion. I had that passion initially. What the light bulb moment is, I want to have family. I want to, wife and 4 kids, and run a business and a nice home, and with a foundation of faith. And from there went to uni, man, and then started working. And I think one step at a time, and as you get experience, I think the passion actually came.
Yeah,
right? Because
develops, right? Yeah, it's not something that just happens. You got to work hard at it, I guess. That's one of the key things, right? And it seems like you've done a lot of hard work in your life, So
yeah, bro. I think, as I said, I'm not a big believer in passion, because I think it can come and go. Like life, not to get full serious, but life throws a lot of different obstacles in your way. And then passion, when the rain's pouring, when the baby hasn't slept, and you got 2, maybe Izzy will know what I'm talking about.
It's been this week.
It's Tuesday, and you've got relatives coming and different things. Man, passion is far from where you can see, right? But if you want to do anything successful, what I figured out and that's where I suppose if I can combine even professional sport compared to a career, professional sport is a bit surreal. Like you can have good 3, 4, 5, 6 games and you get a new contract for Penrith or Parramatta. You can have 2 or 3 bad games and get injured, and then to do anything meaningful in life, particularly at a professional level, I feel like you have to do something good for at least over a decade.
Yes.
Right, so it takes time, and that's where I'm not a big believer in passion and whichever. And there's a couple of things that the more you read into the word, there's a lot of wisdom in there, man. And the word also talks a lot about agriculture and farming. And sometimes you work as hard as you possibly can. You work the land, and your harvest is not good, right? And you do it all again the next year, and then the harvest is, it's okay, right? But you do it over 10, 12 years, and God brings rain. Like you don't have control over all that. I feel like that's where success comes in, right? And the passion will come and go, and the motivation will come and go. But to do anything meaningful in life, you need good people around you, and you need to be doing it over a long period of time.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. I like the way you like the analogy.
No, I'm thinking, bro.
Went a bit deep.
Yeah, bro, let's go deep.
I lost Izzy at 2 hours sleep.
Oh, he's been teething all week. Getting plenty. But after footy, obviously you started working. What was the challenges with work, and how did your thinking into starting a business come around?
So the challenges even come at probably from an academic level, and I didn't realise like it was normal when I was at Blacktown. When I went to Sydney Uni, there were no Polynesians. Straight up.
Wow.
So not even the cleaners?
Wow. Maybe.
So initial challenge was finding my ground, and it was probably my first. I wouldn't say imposter syndrome or anything like that, but it was like, oh shit, man, can I actually do this?
Here,
Like, can I actually do this? Like, and it's that sort of Tony Pulitua thing where once you broke that ground, it's possible. But from an engineering sense, I didn't have that example, right? And so you look around and you try to find sort of group activities or like, and then there's guys who are, from a stereotypical point of view, really smart, right? So like, Indians always study and, they're supposed to be smart, and same with the Asians, like their parents, enrich sort of tutoring or whichever. And in all honesty, man, like, probably because of how busy my mum was and, with my sisters and stuff, I don't think she stopped looking at my report after grade 4.
Yep.
Right. So it was sort of like, this is what I'm going to do, da-da-da. And then once I got into that, then that was my first challenge, I suppose, understanding that I can do that. Got through university and got into the workplace, and then I did have a Tongan friend that I studied with, and it was really funny. I was like, oh, there's one Tongan guy, right? Yeah. He was there, Richie, in my second year.
Shout out to Richie.
Yeah, he's killing it now. He's doing his thing, and he's doing something for Polynesians as well, which is really, really good and healthy. I took a 4-year break because of professional sport, and I came back. And I saw another Tongan guy, and I was like, "Oh,
yes,
hey, there's another Tongan guy." I said, "Hey, man, like, hey, I had a Tongan mate here when I left and come back really good to me." And he's like, "Yeah, bro, he's my brother."
No way.
So shout out to Lissy and Richie, like, if they're listening at some stage. But that was a challenge. And then when you go into the workplace, once again, it's that thing where you go out there and you're breaking stereotypes, man. You're out there, you're doing pre-start, you go high vis on, and the guys think you're the form worker or the whichever, and you got to find your feet and you got to rip and you got to dig in, right? Get that respect as an engineer. So I took that 4 year when I went back. So I actually retired from professional sport in 2010, and that's when I went into engineering.
Yep.
And
what happened with footy?
So I took that 4 year gap after I made my debut, and I actually had 6 or 7 surgeries. I've had 5 on my knee and 2 on my left shoulder. And my last surgery on the knee, the doctor said, "Hey, look, have you got a plan B?" It was a tough decision. I sort of wanted to sort of keep playing and really enjoying it, and I thought I was sort of nearly there. Went for a couple of walks with Katrina, who was my girlfriend at the time, but I also wanted to engage and start a life, and come to the realisation that, hey, look, I've lost a metre of speed, and I've given it the best I could in terms of that. There was the next phase of my life that I wanted to do, so went back to Sydney Uni and finished off that degree, and never looked back. Yep. Once I did that, what I was sort of trying to mention earlier is that intentionally I walked away from sport completely. Never coached, didn't sort of play, went into engineering, and even when I started engineering, initially when I meet people, didn't sort of. Not that I was ashamed of professional sport, but I didn't want to use it as a platform or as a, hey, I play professional sport, give me a chance, whichever. It was, no, I'll get in and I'll, mate, if you needed me to measure something, I'll get out there and measure something. If you needed me to do this, I'll do that. I'll do whatever it takes. I used to take, one dude gets there at 5:45, stuff it, I'll get there at 5:30, and I'll have smoko with him, and I'll have lunch. And I absorbed and sponged everything I could. And people used to tell me, right, like, hey, you don't get paid for this, man. Keith, like, calm down, slow down. What are you doing? Yeah. Like, we get paid for 8-9 hours. But what I learned from professional sport is when you do your extras and you're doing your passing or your fitness and, training's finished and you keep doing it, no one says that, right? Because they know what your ultimate goal is or what your vision is. Yep. And I applied that same mindset to engineering, that I wasn't getting paid for, dollars at an hour or 8-hour days. I was working towards a vision, and the money was...
You're accelerating your learning.
The money was just an outcome, yeah. So I was sort of, aiming for, if you like, try and aim for like a first grade level in engineering, whatever that looked like or whatever that definition was in my own mind.
Yeah.
But I apply that mindset to that.
Did many of the the players or the guys that you played with, I guess, did any of them go through the same path that you could sort of relate to? Well, after sport.
Simple answer, no. No. So I think
not many had a plan B.
No, not really, and it's very hard, right? Because probably what I would say is I think at the time NRL had like an education pathway.
Yeah,
right? So there was definitely an opportunity where they had some funding for each club to use for education purposes. So if players wanted to, explore bachelor's, like a degree or, something route TAFE, that NRL had a budget. And from my understanding at the time was the budget was always underutilised, right? So there was an opportunity there, but the players probably, one, either didn't see themselves as a plan B or probably thought of it as, not giving plan A everything they've got, which at an elite level I completely understand, right? Like they're playing at elite and I've got the utmost respect for everyone doing that and all players because you don't know what they're going through in terms of injuries and family life and whatever else. But I think when I jumped into that pathway, I looked around and there weren't many players, probably one or two I saw.
I did when I was doing my apprenticeship, I was at TAFE and guess who one of my classmates were? Doing construction or carpentry. Tony.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Pulito? Oh, wow.
Everyone was Tony and he's just sitting there. You know how big he is. Yeah, there you go. I totally forgot about that until you said that.
To be there?
Oh, nah, yes.
You can see it on his face. A few times, eh? I think Tony's come through the drive-through a few times.
Nice.
He's in sales, yeah?
Yeah, I think not exactly sure. I know he's still involved with NRL. Yeah. I know he's on the judiciary. I've seen he went and took the trophy out for the grand final and different things.
Yeah.
But he was also involved. They've got like involved with his brothers in the family business as well. So.
You were talking about just because you intentionally left sport, but for a lot of athletes coming out of, there's like a period where they go through, for the next 2 years of post career or post sport. There's a bit. I guess you would have known a lot of players who have probably maybe have experienced that because of your,
Yeah. So it's really hard, right? So I was fortunate enough that I made that decision at 24, and I went through that tough period quite young. So I went through at 24, 25, 26, had a bit of a game plan in terms of I'm going to dive into engineering. Had no idea what a 9 to 5 looked like. I'll be honest, my first email was my uni email. Never sent an email. My phone etiquette was shook. Simply, hi, how are you on the phone? Yep. Like I'd say, hey man, what's going on? And there'd be silence in the office. Like, was this kid sort of all right? So there's a lot of things I had to learn, right? And something that, as I said, when you're younger, you look at, your ticket out of whatever circumstance you're in is professional sport. But then you don't realise that professional sport can end in a heartbeat. Like knee reconstruction right now, they're talking about concussions. And you take these challenges or deficits with you into your future life. And I've seen a lot of guys retiring at 30, 34, 35, where they've spent, a decade and a bit in professional sport. And it's very tough to transition because whilst you have the discipline and the work ethic, you don't have as many foundational skills to apply directly into the workplace, whatever that is. And you're also starting from scratch, right? So a lot of guys, it's very difficult to be at an elite of something in terms of professional sport and completely switch 180 degrees into a professional sense with still an elite mindset, but probably starting at entry level.
Yeah, like you said, 10 years, tough. Like a decade to develop like into some, into a new profession, like coming back in.
Yeah, and I think that's true, whatever you decide to do, right? And I'll pose the important thing for anyone, like, guys coming out of professional sport, I think they need to give themselves the grace to fail at a couple of things. If anyone was easily to rewind the clock back, they're finishing at 32 at the top of their game. But if they rewind the clock back, to under sevens, under nines, they might have been a man child or something, but they weren't that good in footy, and they probably cried a couple of times. Mum and dad sort of took them and I don't want to play today. My arm hurts, or it's raining, I'm cold. I just want to play PlayStation Super. Like that's how they started. So that sort of mindset, they've got to remember that journey that took them to that 32-year-old or, that 10 or 12-year NRL career, because it didn't start at the NRL. It started at sort of, very basic level. If they apply that mindset to whatever field they decide to enter in, and then also give themselves the grace to, you might not be crying and want to play PlayStation or whatever else, but, give yourself the grace to learn a trade, learn an industry. For me, learn how to send emails and phone etiquette and sit in meetings and hold your own, that sort of thing. That just takes time, but if they apply the work ethic and the discipline from professional sport, they'll be just fine.
Well, after sports, started working in engineering, and how'd you start your first business?
Yeah, probably when I started engineering, probably about 4-5 years in, I sort of decided to jump around a little bit. So I did in civil construction. I went into mining, worked in consultancy, and probably after I had all that, I sort of realised, okay, I really enjoy civil construction, and that's probably where, started having thoughts of running my own business, right? So I thought, I think I want to run a business. It's going to be a construction business and whatever else, and I go and ask Katrina, I want to start my own business, and she's like, nah, we're not ready. We're starting a family. Had a first baby, and said, Katrina, I want to start my own business. Nah, we've just had a baby and second baby in, and the time wasn't right, and I was very keen for it, but life progressed, and then it sort of started working for Samoan in construction, and bumped into a guy, similar sort of career path, different backgrounds. So he's raised in a different area and different place, but our values are very much the same. So family values, and we sort of mentioned, hey, look, why don't we start a business together, right? And at the time there was a demand in the market, and we wanted to sort of, I wanted to do construction, he wanted to do consultancy, and consultancy was probably a bit less risk, right? So we said, look, let's have a chat about it. And I think really key thing, right? So I went back to Katrina, and this conversation we had was, I said, look, I want to start a business with James. What do you think? And then she's like, oh, I think that's a great idea, right? And we have this conversation. We sat in our lounge room, looked at each other and said, I love you, and if this business turns to nothing and we start again and we're on the floor, we're together. And she said 100%, right? And that's the endorsement, and I think it's really important it was really important for me to know that she's got my back through good times and bad, and whatever the outcome is, right? That's true love in this marriage, and it's going to sort of test you. But once I had that blessing, then I was ready to go, right? And coming back to that faith and that journey thing, if I started the company 1 or 2, 3 years earlier when I wanted to do it in my way, I don't think I had the network. I don't think I had the experience to get out there, right? So when we started the company, we had sort of work lined up for at least 6 to 12 months. We had sort of good network, and the risk was relatively low. Mind you, COVID sort of hit, and then where we were working in infrastructure, work actually went up to stimulate the economy. Yeah, so the time, and that's
God's timing.
It's God's timing, man. And it's sort of like what I learned was, you try very hard to go against the grain, and you want to do it your way, and it's really important to work hard. But at some stage, once you surrender to God's plan, and sometimes you'll feel it, right? You'll feel it. Like, so God says, "Oh, this is your path and your purpose." No, I don't want to do that, man. That's boring. This looks way better. Or I don't want to wait. Which is really hard to tell anyone. I don't want to be patient. I don't want to learn. I don't want to I want a promotion. I want to do this. I want to achieve it. I want instant gratification, right? And for me, had to learn a lot of tough lessons within myself, and that was that sort of professional sport where I think I could have had a good year and start a company. Nah, man, you got to learn. You got to learn how to pick up the phone. You got to learn. You got to build a network. You got to build respect and integrity within the market that you're trying to sort of build in. And once I did that, and more importantly, man, once I got the blessing from Katrina, and thick and thin, we're in it, and we're in it together. That was all I needed to go from there. So,
was there any big challenges, and how'd you get through
them? For the company,
yeah,
or personally? It's hard because we probably didn't go through the initial, you talk about, companies that sort of, you find your feet, and it takes probably 5 years to find it. So we sat down and we went through a bit of, a business plan, and maybe a little bit naive. Like I'm sure a lot of guys that run their business, like, let's do this. We can do everything, right? Yeah. And then you realise there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only 2 of you. So we sort of went through that, and it actually kicked over really quickly, to be honest, Izzy. And once again, we were working. We got contracts immediately, 12 months, 6 months contracts. The COVID came, stimulus sort of come through, and then there were programs of work for our industry. So then we got employees at probably about 9 or 10 months. These employees stayed on board for 3-4 years, and different things. But so we didn't go through, like, we probably hit our 5-year mark, if I'm completely honest, in about 16 months, 17 months, right? And then it was like, oh, hold on, we need to reassess, right? So we do that. But the challenge I think that probably we're not immune to, and I think applies to a lot of businesses, you go through a bit of over the first 3 to 5 years. We've just passed our 5 years, by the way, which is really important for us on the 15th of August. Thank you, man. And it's sort of finding out who you are as a company, because you have your own personal values, but you need to sort of entrench that in your company. But then 2, also finding who the market thinks you are as well, in terms of what you're good at. And then you've got to bring those sort of people on board and sort of attract good people. And the challenge is probably that it's attracting good people, but then keeping good people. And it's I think it's going to be a constant challenge for us, like the way the market works, and particularly with I suppose younger professionals. They're very keen to chase experience and bounce for promotions and different things. In infrastructure, it was very hard because we went for a boom, so there were a lot of opportunities. So I think that's probably where we're at. And the biggest challenge is for us, our major work came from public sector. So our major client was Transport for New South Wales. We worked on a lot of infrastructure projects, and infrastructure is predominantly funded by the government, essentially the state and federal government. And then whilst we got started and they gave us work, and it went boom, and we went straight away, as I said, to our 5-year mark. The first step was the federal government sort of switched over to Liberal to Labor, and then more recently the state government did the same as well. So generally what happens is they sort of switch funding a little bit with more of a mindset or focus on health and education, and infrastructure sort of gets restricted a little bit because they've got to share the budget. And then we've had to switch our approach probably from, we started off at 80-20 split, so 80% in the public sector, 20% in the private. Literally probably by the end of January, we were 90% in the private sector, right? So something we're really proud of in terms of how we were able to pivot and be a little bit dynamic, but then combine that with keeping good people, retaining good people. What I mentioned earlier, it's difficult, man, and that's probably something that we've navigated through the last sort of 11 or 12 months in terms of government changes and funding and different project and client types. But I think a similar thing is some of the adversity which I spoke about and the challenges that, when I was younger, going through different things, probably at a company level. If we think about our company, we're only kids, right? Like we're only 5 years old in a scheme of trying to do something meaningful over sort of 10 plus years. So this is our adversity and our adjustment and our diversification in terms of clients of what we're going through now to keep us in good stead for the future.
And it's such a good thing, like especially with having a good culture within the community, within the company. I think we've spoken about this before. How have you challenged your employees in ways, just giving them extras? Or I think you mentioned before, like, look, you're going to get people to read books and things like that. How's that working for you?
Well, it's good, right? So we intentionally, within our organisation, we have our budgets essentially, and we, your PAYG, your BAS, whichever, and even sort of donations and different things. But we've also got a training budget, right, and where we sort of really challenge our employees to better themselves, and I think take ownership of their career and their career progression, and also anything from public speaking to chartership in terms of engineering to even subject matter expert, like technical sort of stuff within engineering, we really encourage. On top of that, I've asked guys to sort of, something I do is reinvest in yourself in terms of reading, hard books, audibles, things, and talk about what are you reading, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be engineering, because I think you could be very limited if you just go one dimensional. Feed into your mind things from outside, and sort of comes full circle. Like, so, and then we'll talk about sort of what you're reading and different things. Early on in the piece, we sort of did something, and you got to remember these engineers, right? So they're not, or everyone's coming from sporting backgrounds, whichever. So we met, I think, at 4 a.m. up in the mountains and did the walkthrough. Went with falls. One of the boys did take a fall in a bit of a scrape, but it was good sort of character building and good ways to. I think when you combine fitness with social, when you're walking next to someone, it's very different. When you're sweating next to someone, you can sort of get to know them a bit better. We did a 4 a.m. walk in Bronte as well. We went and did the beach walk as a company, which I thought was really good, and something very different that organisations probably can probably reinvest in, right? So the return on investment's not immediate. So you say, what's a walk in the mountains going to do? How does that actually help engineering? But I think, reading, exercise, and something, a big advocate, like as I said, is also family as well, right? So as we've progressed, what we're really proud of is, I've had 2 extra kids. I've got 4 kids. James has got 4 young kids. We've had some of our guys get engaged, have babies born within our company. Guys buying their first house, and that's probably something that I'm super proud of. That not only from a professional sense, that they're advancing their professional career, but they're also having impacts at their personal levels and also within their own communities as well.
Yeah. So so for a younger viewer sort of watching, the different types of engineering. So you've got you guys are civil engineers predominantly. And then you've got like there's some other areas of engineering, right? If you're looking at engineering as a vocation, so we've got environmental, civil. What are the main ones that?
Yeah, there's heaps, right? So there's major fields, like you can be a mechanical engineer, and you can do everything from biomechanics to mechatronics. In that sort of field, you could be an electrical engineer. So what I am is a civil engineer, right? So even within the civil engineering space, you could be you can major in geotechnical, sort of with soil and dirt, environmental, with like a remediation of land, asbestos, contaminants, that sort of thing. You can be almost like a project manager, essentially, a construction manager, construction management. So there's a bunch of different fields, structural as well, for buildings. Like, a lot of guys get enticed from, those sort of mega buildings in Dubai and different things that look, fairly sexy for career-wise. But there's a bunch of different fields. Probably what I'll say, going back to that sort of passion thing, I think it's very mathematical, sort of heavy at the start, and maths, physics, that sort of thing. But I'm not actually sure in the future, what sort of engineering, what engineering will look like, to be honest. Like, there's a bit of talk these days about digital engineering and artificial intelligence and different things. So what once was very important in terms of how you do mathematical calculations, formulas and equations and vertices and that sort of thing, how much you'd actually use it in the future. Because when I went to Sydney Uni, it was very sort of technical and foundational. Once you go out into the field, whilst it's important to know, you don't actually apply it depending on what field you can go in. But what I would say, and I definitely encourage anyone, is engineering teaches you how to think logically, how to solve problems, and probably more importantly, how to ask really good questions. Why isn't this working? What's the root cause? What's the pattern? That sort of thing. And engineering, I've had a lot of friends over the course of my career that have sort of switched over and gone into sort of banking and stuff because of their mathematical backgrounds, running firms.
So it's transferable. The skills are very transferable because,
most definitely. And I think that's why it's very hard because as a young person, I hear a lot about sort of, I'm not passionate about that.
Yes.
Or like, I can't get into that. Like, what's going to get me up in the bed in the morning? My approach has always been just get out of bed and get going. Put one foot in front of the other. And, I started as a civil engineer because I thought my uncle had a nice life and, he had a wife and kids and whichever. I went in there and went into geotechnical, took me to mining. I went up to Brisbane after the 2011 dams, 2011 floods up in Brisbane, working the dams team with GHD. So it can take you to like Lissy, the guy I mentioned earlier. He was up in the UK working for KPMG. Before that, he was in mining in Ernest Henry and with Glencore in Queensland. His brother worked for John Holland, Richie, the first Tongan. And he's now sort of started a company called Vaya, and they're working on apps now after sort of.
Fafita, Richie Fafita, yeah. Oh, yeah,
that's right.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so,
They run their PPN.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So Richie came over from New
yeah.
Zealand first. We met when I was the first time around.
Oh, yeah.
And then I took 4 years off and then came back, and Lissy was there.
Did you know him from New Zealand?
No. I met him through the Pacific Professionals.
Yeah.
Network.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and they're doing really, that's a really good initiative that they've set up, this is like very similar, like we want to build on that, you know?
Oh, 100%. So that's sort of what I was referring to earlier.
Yeah, wow, awesome.
Oh, how has the Pacific culture influenced you in running a business and even handling money?
So there's probably two questions there, and I'll probably say, I'll start with, so the first one being business and the second one being money, right? Yep. So for the first question, I think the Pacific culture, what I mentioned earlier, has taught me a lot about humility and respect, right? So I think it's really important when you lead that you're not actually above or below anyone. You know, you respect everyone on their terms, and everyone has a role to play within the company. So it's not necessarily that you're above. It's your role to be the GM. It's your role to be the director. And it's also your role to be the project engineer or the contracts admin or whatever else, right? So if you can keep that with you, I think it goes a long way in terms of how you deal with people, and people really gravitate to that, and your clients, and it's like a genuine approach. I will say, when you live life, what I've experienced is life's full of sort of dichotomies, right? Sort of contradictions. So in the culture, while it's good to be humble and have respect, sometimes you can see it go the other way. Right, and I've seen some Polynesians at a young age, and they say, I want to be an astronaut, right? And then you sort of get that look like, you're kidding yourself, mate. Why be an astronaut? And I feel, from a Polynesian sense, we have to be very careful with that, because unknowingly, and we don't. No one does it on purpose, but you sort of almost suppress the youth in terms of allowing them to dream, speak up. Generally you sit at the bottom, wait for the elders to talk, don't say anything, let these guys eat, then you can come eat, and so it's really important. But if you're going to change someone's trajectory by 1 or 2 degrees, I'm talking about doing something meaningful over decades, 10, 20 years, that the person that wanted to be an astronaut when they were 9 and they were dreaming big, they settle for a job that's subpar to what their dreams and ambitions are. So you have to be really careful with that.
It's just that the mixing that traditional with the within the Western sort of life, the traditional, and that is just separating the two, I guess, and acknowledging or having the awareness to separate.
Yeah, I think so, and it's a fine balance, right? It's a fine balance, because I think if it's done well with strong leadership, it's really good. But then, you just have to be careful that you don't separate.
That's always been like an older generation thing, but I think people our age now are starting to realise that. It's like, hey, it's okay to dream. It's okay to say, Dad, I love you. It's okay to express yourself, So it's, what do you think of that?
I think we're young in the process, because we're like, we always have this thing. We've only had money in the Pacific Islands, I think, for about 150 years now, whereas money's been around for thousands of years, So I think that's another thing we've got to be conscious of, that not to be too hard on ourselves, that this is a journey, and we're young in the process, but to maybe accelerate the awareness. This is how we can do it. These sort of discussions. Yeah,
and I think the awareness is essentially communication, right? So at any level. So husband and wife, if you're communicating, things are going all right. If you're business partners and directors, things are going all right. And I think the same attitude should be applied to money, right? So when you're younger, around the dinner table, you could talk about professional sport quite easily, like how the Panthers are doing, there's a 4-peat, do you think they're going to do it again? But very rarely do you have a chat about money, around taxes, company tax, income tax, payroll tax, PAYG, that sort of like...
Savings, budgeting, mortgages.
100%, and even So like, and having healthy discussions, right? So sometimes I can see a lot of things, and whether it's culture driven or whichever, is that a lot of money gets thrown around, and it's very expensive for funerals, for weddings, for there's a thing that we do at church in Samoan. Not sure why, but at the end they actually read out the donations from each family.
Oh, it happens in the Fiji.
So like this is this, and I still to this day I say, hey, look, why are we reading this out? I don't know if the mindset is, if we don't read it out, they wouldn't give. But at the same time, you like to think, from your faith and from what you bring forward, that anything to thrive, like a podcast, a company, whichever needs money, different beliefs depending on what you practice, tithing and different things, that for anything to prosper, that you need to put forward and follow where your heart is. So I think that's where that sort of culture comes in. But if we can, probably what I would say is a couple of things is, learn how to spend money, save money, invest money, and also how to give it away healthily, right, to things you believe in, whether it's charity, church, whichever else. I think if you can do those 4 things with money and have those conversations to your children, to your spouse, to your family, if it's done in an appropriate way, I think it will go a long way to sort of understanding that. Because if you lean too heavily in one, if you spend too much, it's no good. If you save too much, it's no good. And if you don't do anything, you just invest everything, well, that's no good either. So if you can, start having some of those conversations, I think you'll go a long way to deepening your understanding and what everyone, choose to do with it.
I guess we've spoken about it as well, property ownership. How has that impacted you guys as a family, and even for yourself, to own something here in Australia?
It's an interesting one, Izzy, to be honest. So I suppose when you migrate over, I think that's the, over in the States they call it the American dream, but over here, the Australian dream is that you migrate over and you find a parcel of land and, ownership, and that, that's really yours. And I think that's important to strive for. We went through a bit of an investment journey, and have to be completely honest, is that I bought my first house in Blacktown in 2008, and it was at a GFC when I had a sort of NRL contract. So one, I didn't appreciate what a GFC does. It just meant that the property was cheaper. And then 2, from a professional sense, money was coming in. I was playing professional sport, like, this is easy, like, whatever else. So I thought property, is a great investment vehicle, and I still think it is to this day. But we went on to sort of purchase 4 properties in Queensland, and then what we learnt was it's very easy with 2 incomes and whichever, but we got challenged from a personal sense. I said in the company we went all right, but we had to learn a lot of lessons as a family. And when we went to 1 income, our baby come along, another baby, it really challenges how you think. And when you invest, I feel like you have to do it a long time, because the buy-in and buy-out's very expensive, right? So we ended up selling those properties and clearing them out, buy our home, and then now from a company sense, reinvested in ourselves, but then also run the company, and we have our family home, and then simply we put our money elsewhere in like a mutual fund. So I think property is really important from ownership and having a block that you can call home. But my mindset has changed and shifted, if I'm completely honest, in terms of it's probably more so how I look at things is that the property, for me, and it's not investment advice, I think everyone needs to sort of consider their own situation, their own risk profile, their own journey, is that if you invest in a business and your outcome, then the property will come late. The multiple properties will come later. So your house is important because it gives you stability or whichever.
How do you balance business and life and community, and even getting a marathon in?
Marathon.
Mate, you're a very busy man. Oh, this guy he's a machine. But how do you balance all that and still, you might have time to come to a podcast?
I have a really good wife.
Yeah, preach. Come on.
Shout out
Church.
to Katrina.
Thank you. Thank you, Kat.
It's a great question, right? And sometimes I think what gets thrown around a lot these days is like work-life balance, right? Like people talk about work-life balance.
such thing, right? There's no such thing, right? I don't think
I was going to say I don't believe in it, to be honest, because I don't think there's a unique split like a 80-20 or a 70-30 in terms of. I actually feel like you live life in seasons and it oscillates, right? So and seasons can go for 3 months, as a typical, but seasons can also go for 3 years, 4 years, depending on how many kids you want to have, sleep, career progression, and different things. And I think it's important that you recognise that oscillation. And I think for me is that what I've learned is intentionality, right? So when you're at work, be at work. When you're at home, be at home, and be invested in conversations with your wife. Have dinner around the dinner table and invest in your kids. Something that when I started the business, I haven't really had social media, so it saved me a lot of time, and I haven't gone through that sort of progress. I have signed up recently over the last couple of weeks. Happy to be here. Like, this is my first podcast. I'll break the duck on the podcast, but I think the intentionality part of it, and I think. I don't know. I sort of feel like there's probably three things, and with a foundation of faith. Like, I've sort of always pictured almost like a sort of triangle sort of paper, and it's got 3 points with a pin underneath, like balancing, and that pin underneath is your faith, right? And then the other stuff is your fitness, your family, and your finance, right? So if you go too heavily in your finance in terms of, hey, I just want to get promoted, or I just want my career progression to go like this, then it's going to fall and it's going to tip. Right, and obviously what COVID said is you can work from home and different things, but if you stay at home every day, it's very hard to put food on the table, right? And the underlying thing, you also mentioned the marathon was a bit of a. I'm still recovering, to be honest. I don't know how Robin's going, but I think the fitness part is another key component. That if you want to do something for a long time, well, you got to be fit and healthy, right? If you're going to sort of,
especially in our community, not many of us make it to grey older age.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. You got to look after yourself, and it's sort of like type 2 diabetes is very prominent, in the Pacific and different things.
Gout.
I've got gout, and you stave off. There's because of our diets and different things, high insulin, that sort of thing that you sort of need to look into. But if my definition of success is doing something very well over a long period of time. If you want to be around for a long period of time. You don't necessarily have to run marathons.
First and last.
As I said, I'm still hurting, man. But find that, because that triangle that I mentioned as well is that fitness will take care of your family and also take care of your finance. But then keep God at the center of your life, and make sure all your decisions, pray on it first. Ask for advice and different, and lean on to that first, because. You have to be a bit careful. Like, once a little bit of success kicks in, that's where sort of ego comes into play, and that's where the enemy will sort of come and question and challenge different things. That you always sort of pray for that sort of understanding and that guidance, that whatever comes along, obstacles but also success, that you're treating it with the utmost respect, and
Pretty much answered my next question. I
don't
know, you jumped the gun. Are you reading this? No, it was going to be, what advice would you give to someone who's starting out, our community, who's starting out their own business, especially also around money?
My advice is to just get started. All right, so don't wait for passion. Don't wait for get started, work through, and it's okay. It's okay to fail. Like, don't you're not going to get shamed like in the village, or you're not going to you started that company, it failed. You did it. Like, it's okay to get started, and surround yourself. My advice is probably try find yourself some good people. And more importantly, probably try find some mentors. And you don't have to sign a contract to be a mentor. They don't have to be your mentor for everything. You want to sort of lean and look at people that have probably paved. And if it's not Polynesian, that's okay too. Like if there's a Lebanese builder, if there's an accountant, a mortgage broker, whatever, couriers, different. There's so many different things.
How did you approach your first mentor? I guess in a way,
to be honest, they didn't know they were my mentor.
Yeah.
Is he?
Wow.
So I'm watching from afar,
cool.
and I'm looking and I'm saying it like,
it's cool, man.
Hey, look how this guy runs his meeting. Look how he turns up to work on time. Look how he speaks to the graduate. Look how he speaks to the janitor.
Wow.
And then you say, okay, like, I really like that. So as I said, there was no binding contract saying, "Hey, can you please be my mentor?" Seek them out, man. And what I found is, now as you get older, you get a bit of a buzz. Like you know what someone that's driven or someone that's honest, someone that's genuine. If you go to someone and you say, "Hey, look, can I just can I give you a call once in a while?" And I just want to sort of pick your brain on a couple of things. So I've got a couple of guys that I lean on to now. One lives in Melbourne, man, and he's 72 and he's retired.
Wow,
another guy's here, 73, probably should be retired, but he's just loving it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I speak to them anything from the first thing we always ask each other is, "How's your family?"
Yes.
And how's your how's the kids and how's your health and different things, and you lean on what are you passionate about these days, and who have you helped besides yourself, right? So we have those sort of questions, and by all means, man, we talk about professional sense as well. So my advice to anyone young is, you'll be surprised when you go and ask someone.
Yes.
That if you show initiative and you show drive, and you're not just saying, "Hey, can you help me do everything?" You're making those mistakes. You're putting that step in front of the other. There's nothing better than seeing someone like that, and a mentor will be more than happy to provide advice, provided that you're doing your best with whatever path you're taking.
That's great, man. I'm inspired. I'm very inspired, honestly.
I didn't know I could watch from afar. Like I'd never thought about that, but that whole song, in case you didn't know, and like I don't know. No, but I love that because a lot of people will be always saying, how do I get a mentor? How do I get a mentor? Do I need to go speak to him? How do I approach him? But watching someone, see how they behave and see how they carry themselves, that's a great way.
I heard this analogy, I don't know who it was, I think it's Matt Fraser from CrossFit, right? And he's talking about, like, when you have a flat tire on the side of the road, when you have a flat tire and you sit there, and if you just sit in your car and you think like, you start feeling sorry for yourself, well, no one's going to stop. But if you start get the tire out and you're like, "I've got no idea what I'm doing," then straight away someone will pull over. You'll be very surprised. They're like, "Oh, this guy's having a crack, but he looks like he's struggling." Right, so I think if you're doing that from
that goes with life.
If you're doing it from a business sense, and you say, "Hey, you're doing your best. You're getting knocked down, you're getting back up, you're trying," and then you're reaching out to sort of multiple mentors. And similar advice is like, don't be afraid of no. Like, you reach out to a mentor and they say no, no worries. And a mentor, don't try to think you can mirror their life, because they have their own upbringing, they have their own challenges, they have their own opportunities and limitations. It's okay to pick a little bit
take
from
the
everyone,
good,
right?
take all the good.
You say, or you take a little bit from this person, how they run a meeting. You take away this person, how they balance their professional life with their personal life. The other person, how they mentor the young people that they're bringing up, right? So you can take bits and pieces and you find advice from where you are, but mentors, get used to no in your life, and get used to a little bit of failure and adversity. And just understand that it's okay. There's night, there's day, there's winter, there's summer, there's yes, there's no's, there's So once you're comfortable with that, you'll be right.
Yeah, for sure. Joey?
Good, I'm good, man. I'm learning. I'm listening, man. I'm soaking it all in.
Sure you don't want any more Fiji water?
Fiji water. Sorry,
Fiji water.
Bro, I've got one more very important question. How many muscle ups are you up to now? I've been watching. You say you're not on social media, but every time I watch your stories, mate, he's doing muscle ups. Tell me.
Wow.
I didn't realise how much the marathon was going to take away from me. Not only in terms of preparation, but also
Sydney Marathon ambassador right here.
Yeah. Look us up.
Major sponsor.
That's another thing, right? So coming rugby league, I sort of found CrossFit, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, nice.
With all thing, and I think it's probably that learning things new. I've still got a few scars from rope climbing.
Not on the tools.
Touching into this.
But yeah, man, it's been a crack, and it's sort of like different sort of community, different something, very positive sort of environment that I found myself in for CrossFit.
You're one of the older guys there, eh? Still smashing the young ones.
No, I am the oldest.
We're the same age.
No, it's really good, man. But I'm still let Robert know I'm still recovering from the marathon.
I'm just looking forward to the next one. Oh gosh, on that
Yeah, thank
you
you very
good?
much. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome, man. Thank you very much for coming on today, Keith. And I'm inspired actually, and I feel like you've delivered like the messages that our audience need to hear in a very simple and simple way. You know, that, like especially that last question about the mentors, how you explain that, and that's. I think a lot of us, even me to this day, I'm like, how do I find a mentor? And it's like, I've been doing it.
That was a mic drop moment. Just like,
I've been doing what you're saying, but you've just explained it really well. So that's awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate you for being here today, and hopefully get you back in the next year or two, and we'll see where you're up to.
Yeah, no, reciprocate. As I said, it's my first podcast, and I've had a blast. It's really good, and I'd like to thank you guys not only for today, but what you're doing. I think it's really positive. Putting yourself out there, and also getting some Polynesians and some Pacific Islander people that doing stuff for their community and for the businesses in a positive way. So really, really good. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you guys.